Our interview today is with Mr. Robert Holshouser. Today is June the 2nd, 2006. We are at the Library of the First Presbyterian Church. Mr. Holshouser, we thank you for coming and allowing us to interview you for the Mooresville Museum. We know that your family has been in Mooresville for quite some time, and your father was the owner of the Mooresville Iron Works. So we would like for you to tell us about how your family came to Mooresville and how it came to be that he had the Iron Works, and then we'll talk some more about what you have done in your lifetime.
Okay. My father, Robert J. Holshouser, born 1912, November 30th, 1912 in Granite Quarry. Graduated Granite Quarry High School, operated a newsstand in Salisbury. A friend of his that came in quite often, R.J. Higginbotham, suggested to my father that a good investment for the two of them would be to open a foundry and machine shop in Mooresville. In September of 1936, they moved to Mooresville and opened what was then called Mooresville Iron Works. My father and R.J. Higginbotham operated it until 1942 as a partnership. 1942, Mr. Higginbotham decided to pursue other avenues. My father bought out Mr. Higginbotham's interest in the ironworks at that time. Because the Second World War was going on, a lot of the employees, a lot of the people were going to industries that were doing government work as a protection for them against draft, against having to go to overseas. At that time, several of the employees that had left here and gone to work with other businesses contacted my father about a possibility of combining Mooresville Iron Works with Broadfoot Iron Works in Wilmington, North Carolina. Broadfoot was doing a lot of work on mine sweepers, replacing shafts, upfitting the equipment, but did not have enough foundry machine shop capacity. So in 1943, early 1943, Mr. Broadfoot and my father joined forces and formed an LLC, Mooresville Iron Works, which they operated doing government work and producing products for the war effort. This continued through the war effort through 1945. Then the Iron Works returned back to doing primarily textile machine parts. Employment along that period of time was running about 60, 65 employees. In early 1950, the foundry machine shop standardized on their product line and started making a product for use on replacement parts for use on textile machinery. At that time, the business changed a good bit and the employment increased to about 85, 90 employees about that time. This operated with Broadfoot and my father as partners until 1963, when my brothers and sister and my father purchased Mr. Broadfoot's interest out of Mooresville Iron Works. At that time, we changed the name of the company from Mooresville Iron Works to Holshouser Incorporated. We operated Holshouser Incorporated doing textile machine parts for approximately 6 more years. In the mid-60s, we were the first foundry in North Carolina to go all induction melting, all electric, which eliminated pollution, eliminated the exhaust from the coke that we used for melting. We were quite proud of the fact that we were one of the early foundries to take that kind of a step. In 1969, Crompton & Olds Corporation out of Worcester, Massachusetts, made a decision to purchase Holshouser Incorporated. So Holshouser Incorporated became a part of Crompton & Olds in July 1st, 1969. The foundry machine shop was operated under Crompton & Olds until 1981, which time Lee Sona Corporation bought the plant, and then it operated one more year before it was finally shut down. That is a quick synopsis of Mooresville Iron Works and Holshouser's incorporated into Crompton and Knowles until the plant closed in 1982, December the 2nd of 1982. At that time, we had approximately 140 employees at the plant when it closed. Going back to my father, through those years that he was operating Mooresville Iron Works and Holshouser's Incorporated, Father was quite active in the community and serving on the town board for 12 years, prior to the time that he was mayor. He was mayor of Mooresville from 1949 through 1951. After that time period, he became active with the county commission and served on the county as a county commissioner for 8 years. This was from about 54 through about 62. He was very active with his church, Mooresville First Presbyterian Church, having joined there shortly after they moved to Mooresville in the mid-30s and becoming a deacon, an elder, and being a member through his death, June the 13th of 1994. He served in many different areas throughout the town. He was quite active with the Chamber of Commerce, working with it over the years. He worked with as a director on Mooresville Savings and Loan for approximately 25 years. He was a director on the Lowrance Hospital Board for 26 years, receiving a 25-year pin just before he retired. The other activities with the League of Municipalities, these type activities they did don't really have a timetable or a point. I do know that from a civic standpoint, civic organization, he joined the Kiwanis Club and was a member of the Mooresville Kiwanis Club for approximately 30 years. He was president of the Mooresville Kiwanis Club at one time. Over the years, he, I think we covered the savings and loan. He was also on the executive board of Carolina First National Bank, just prior to it merging with the North Carolina, NCNB, North Carolina National Bank. He married Gladys Roberts, his high school sweetheart, in 1932. To that marriage were 4 children. James Richard, who was a retired Presbyterian minister, which was sponsored by Mooresville First Presbyterian Church. Robert, myself, which worked with him in the ironworks. My sister, Lorlee Holshouser, pardon me, and a younger brother, Howard Holshouser. At this point, I'm going to say, have you got some questions you might want to?
Yes. After the ironworks closed down in 1981, you said 82.
December of 82.
All right. Then where did your career lead at that point?
At that point,
before we leave that, tell us, so everybody will know. Tell us where the ironworks was.
It was located, right?
Where it was located.
the ironworks was located on North Main Street, right next door to the Mooresville Cotton Gin, which is now Bay State Milling Company, right on the corner of Mackey Avenue and Main Street.
And Bay State actually owns that building.
Bay State bought the building. I'm thinking they bought it in about 86 or 87. We maintained an office there. I did. I stayed with the company from the closing in December of 1982 until February the 1st of 1985. And we utilized the plant for storage and for office space until 1985, at which time we closed the office and lease owner continued with the building until, I'm thinking, late 86, early 87.
Now, there's a rail siding behind the foundry. Tell us how you use that.
rail siding that came up behind the foundry was used by the Mooresville Flour Mills, by Mooresville Iron Works, and also by Troutman Furniture Company, bringing in wood products. We brought in molding sand, foundry sand, we brought in pig iron, scrap. We brought in all of the supplies for the foundry by rail. That was, pig iron came from primarily Birmingham, Alabama, and would be a 40-ton car at a time. Sand would come in from Lugoff, South Carolina. Bentonite, the clay products, would come in from Kentucky and West Virginia. But we primarily used it for those products, foundry supplies.
So the raw metal that you got in, you actually melted it down and put it in molds and made your textile equipment.
The foundry, when it was originally started, did sand casting. All metals were melted in a whitened cupola using coke as a heat source, and the metal was melted and poured at, generally it was coming out of the cupola at about 2,750 degrees Fahrenheit. This continued, that melting continued until 1965, when we went to the cordless induction furnaces and we melted electrically. We were the second largest user of electricity in Mooresville at that time, behind Mooresville Mills. At that point, we could melt metal 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We casted, we did sand castings of all of our parts. In the early 70s, we switched from doing just purely, I'll say generally, a general product line of textile machine parts, to where we went to a standardized product line of the gearing for looms. We were in the weaving section of it. So we were primarily a gear shop. We casted the part from raw material, machined it, cut the teeth, and then sold it as a finished product.
Did you ship any of it out by rail, or was it by truck?
No, all shipments, because most of the shipments were smaller, all shipments were by truck, tractor trailer, but by truck.
Where did your family first live when they came to Mooresville?
Family first lived on McNeely Avenue. Forgive me for that. I have to go back and think on that one. Lived on McNeely Avenue. Can't remember the number, but it was on, would have been on West McNeely.
Okay.
And then 1941, father and mother moved around the corner from McNeely on to Main Street and built a house at 618 North Main Street, which is now law offices of Russ West.
Kind of across the street from where the old shopping center is.
Where the shopping center is on Main Street, is directly across.
And when did you build your house out on 21?
My parents built their house and moved out on 21 next to the golf course in September of 1960. They made the move, I think it was over Labor Day in 1960. And I stayed in Mooresville. I was with Crompton Knowles, Lisona, until February the 1st of 1985. I did contract work with Lisona until that date. I then joined Army T. Shanks as general manager of their operation on the corner of Mazeppa Road and 115. We started the plant in operation, actually installing equipment in beginning operations in the summer of 1985. They operated in startup mode and beginning area until October of 1986, at which time they made the decision to close the plant due to competition from overseas in Mexico
What kind of plant were they?
It was ceramics whiteware, making bathroom fixtures, lavatories, commodes, tanks, products of that type. The plant is now occupied by NGK Corporation, making catalytic converters for automobiles. At that point, when Armitage Shanks closed, I then went into insurance sales, health insurance sales, doing employee benefit plans for group health insurance, individual health insurance under Heritage Associates, which I'm still doing.
Well, now, at one point, you mentioned that you worked with I don't know, Development Corporation here in town, or
As a member of the chamber, I was a member of the Mooresville Chamber of Commerce when we had the foundry machine shop in Compton and Knowles. I served on the chamber, as a member for about 30 years, and then I served as vice president of economic development for about 15 years, different areas there. Worked with the chamber as they were bringing new industries into Mooresville. When we were bringing in Parker Hannafin, Armitage Shanks, NGK, the different industries like that. Had the opportunity to work with the North Carolina Department of Economic Resources as they were bringing in additional industries. Going back to my father and talking about working with industries coming into Mooresville, in the late 50s, early 60s, when Mooresville was going through a change from all textiles, and the textiles were starting to reduce employment, my father and a group of people, a group of local businessmen, started the South Idle Development Corporation as a division of the Chamber of Commerce. This South Idle Development Corporation was instrumental in bringing in companies like Draymore, Kinspun, Timblon, your different companies that have built out on Plaza Drive. These are the ones that were brought in by the early beginning of South Idle Development Corporation. It has reorganized over the years and has brought in many other industries such as Cardinal Glass, the racing industry. But that began, the original beginning of South Idle Development Corporation was in the late 50s, early 60s, and we started seeing changes from the textile community to a diversified community.
Was Armitage Shanks about the first industry that started out Mazeppa Road?
Armitage was the first one to go on the corner right on Mazeppa and 21. There were a couple smaller ones that had come in, Southeastern material handling, doing welding and products, step ladders, things of this type, specialty ladders. But Armitage was the largest one to begin out there. And that was in February of 85. They actually began construction in November of 84 and then started limited production in the summer of 85.
Any other questions, Albert?
No, not right now.
Okay, well, is there anything else that you want to tell us about?
I think that from what we were talking about, history of my father's involvement in Mooresville, coming in when he did in 36, when
That was during the Depression.
that was right after the Depression. He had had the opportunity, he had been a baseball player in high school, earning him an athletic scholarship to Lowell Ryan College. Because of the Depression and his family, he was a child, one of 11 children in the family. And he was unable to accept the scholarship to Lowell Ryan. I think one of the proud areas there is to see what my father accomplished in his taking courses, correspondence courses and other courses to improve his educational background, realizing that he had not been able to accept the scholarship because of limited financial at that time. But then to also see how he excelled and how he did in the community, working with it, what he put back into the community for what the community had given him. the family's quite proud of both my mother and my father for what they have done for the community.
Well, I think we could certainly say that he was a visionary in working with the South Ireland Development Corporation to bring in all the industry, knowing that the textile industry was declining, and to diversify the industry in Mooresville. Well, we thank you, Mr. Holshouser, for coming.
Appreciate the opportunity.